something's wrong. So we created these validation steps to do the early validation and alert you if anything needs to be adjusted in your environment. We're all green across the board. Now we'll go off and create this. Now, if I was using a competitor product, I'd probably still be swapping DVDs, flipping through hundreds of pages of documentation, and most likely writing another check to professional services. With R2, the system's doing all the configuration for me. I don't need help, hence it wasn't configured. And the system's going to do the configuration for me. And at the very end here, there we go. All right, we're just about configured. We're going to click Finish here as soon as we're done with this enrollment and connect up to the control point. All right, here we go. So at the very end, we connect up to the control point, and here's our at-a-glance dashboard. Now, most people are probably thinking, that doesn't look very interesting, lots of gray numbers, etc. Well, we just created the control point, so we haven't started collecting our data yet. But we're done with step 1. Step 2, we're going to enroll some instances with the control point. So we start collecting utilization data about them. Now, you'll notice that there's already one instance enrolled. This is the control point. We collect data about the control point so you can monitor its health. To enroll additional instances, we'd click on Enroll Instances, and that'll launch a very similar wizard to the Create Control Point. Again, 5 simple steps to enroll an instance. Now, I could do this one at a time, or I could script this using PowerShell, so I could do a batch enrollment of all my instances in my environment. We're going to go ahead and skip that step today. And then the final step is to configure the policy on the control point. Now, this policy is going to run over the utilization data we're collecting and tell us where we're over or underutilized. This step, though, is optional, Ted. We provide a set of out-of-box policies for DBA so you can get started right away.
And these are policy-based management policies?
These are policy-based management policies under the covers. Now, over time, after I monitor my environment, I may want to adjust these default policies. It's really just setting a spinner control up to maybe 5% constitutes an underutilization state. And then maybe I want to change the window of evaluation. And using slider bars, I can change the window of evaluation. So again, keeping with this getting up and running and configured properly theme. That's it. We're up and running. Now, shall we go look at a control point that's been running for a while?
Great.
I'm going to connect up to another control point. And our at-a-glance dashboard looks a little more interesting. In this control point, I have 7 managed instances. 5 are well utilized, 1 overutilized, and 1 underutilized. Also on this dashboard, I can see the trend of my storage utilization for all the instances in my environment, and I get a snapshot of my free and used space across all my instances. Now, that 1 underutilized instance looks interesting. To drill in on that, I can click on Managed Instances. We'll drop that down a little bit. And I get a listing of all my instances and the policy health state across all those instances. Our 1 overutilized instance is at the top, and there, second from the bottom, is our underutilized instance. Let's go take a look at what's going on that instance. If I select it, I get the details down below. I'm going to click on the Storage Utilization tab, and there's a few databases that aren't using as much disk space as we've allocated to them. So we can drill into the Blog Engine HR database, expand out the file group, and we see all the data files that are allocated to that database. Now, if I thought that I needed to go make some correction here, maybe free up some space for other applications, in Object Explorer within Management Studio, I could connect to that instance and do that consolidation. So here, Ted, in about 5 minutes, we were up and running. We saw a live control point, and were able to find the issue of underutilization and what steps I needed to do to correct it. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh?
That's great. Well, can you show us some of the application management capabilities?
Absolutely. So the other big investment, let me just flip back to our dashboard, is around the data tier application component. So I'm going to flip over to Object Explorer here, and we're going to connect up to another instance that's running our application. Now, we heard loud and clear from our customers that they have existing applications, and they want the benefit of the data tier application and that higher level of management brought to their new applications. Within Management Studio, if I expand here the Management node, we have a new node called Data Tier Applications. I don't have anything deployed on this instance. What I do have deployed on this instance, though, is a database that represents my existing application, Pubs. I can take the Pubs application and I can register this app as a data tier application and get all the benefits of the data tier app. So let's go ahead and do that. If I select Tasks and Register Data Tier App, I get presented with a very straightforward three-step wizard. If I click Next, I need to provide some metadata about the app, what its name is, version, and description. We'll take the defaults. Now we go in and we interrogate the database. We understand the schema, all the objects within a database. We understand the relationship between users and logins, and we create a model of that. Looks like we're good to go. And now we're going to go ahead and register this database as a data tier application with the instance. What this does is it stores some additional metadata on the instance. Looks like we're green, all good to go. I'm going to refresh the data tier app node, and there's our application. Now this didn't make any changes to my database. All my applications that are accessing that database continue to access it. But one of the key benefits about doing this is I now get visibility to this application in my multi-server dashboard. So if I flip back over to the Utility Explorer, I can get a view of all of my data tier apps across all my managed instances, and I can drill down into the details of those apps. We'll drop this down a little bit, scroll down, and there's my Pubs app. And I can see that it's green across the board. But that's not the only benefit, Ted. As you mentioned, there's a relationship between data tier developers or database developers and DBAs. And the data tier application component really works to strengthen that collaboration. I'm going to flip over here to Visual Studio 2010 Beta 2. Now this is the first time we've demoed this in front of a live audience, so it's very, very exciting.
I'm hanging on.
Hang on.
Yeah, watch out for help.
Now, Beta 2 released last week, so this is something the audience can go download today. Now, within Beta 2, we have a new project type called the Data Tier Application Component, and it shows up under the SQL Server projects. Now, I'm not going to file new here. Instead, I've populated the project with my Pubs application. I'm going to expand out here, and we're going to pop open the authors table. Now, my change request is, on the authors table, we track last name and first name of our authors. We also want to add middle name. So I'm going to do a little copy and paste here. And we'll put in our middle name. Middle name is not a required field. And we'll save that. So now we have last name, middle name, and first name. So we've just done a schema change. And we'll close that window. Now, the other value here is, using a policy-based management policy as part of my project, I can capture my deployment requirements. Let's say that we want to change the platform here to only deploy to x64 environments. Let me zoom in on that so the audience can see x64. And then we want to be sure that TCP is enabled on the target machine because we have remote applications connecting. And then the final thing is we want this to be deployed to SQL Server 2008 or greater, which is version 10.0. What I end up with down here, Ted, is very much like an Outlook-style rule description of what my policy is. Very simple and straightforward. We'll save that. All of our changes are done. So we changed the authors table, and we added a policy. Let's go ahead and build this solution. Now, in today's environment, I, as a developer, would hand off a bunch of T-SQL scripts and maybe some instructions for deployment to my DBA. In the new world, the output I get from the build process is a .DAC pack. This is my single unit of deployment. This is what I now hand off to my DBA. So I'm going to copy that path, and we're going to flip back over to Management Studio and put our DBA hat back on. Now I'm going to expand the Pubs database, and we'll see some data sitting in our authors table. And we'll see that this data currently just has last name and first name. So our change is to add middle name. Go ahead and close that. Now, one of the other benefits of the data tier application is I now have an upgrade verb. I don't have to generate the alter scripts. I can let the system do that for me. This launches our upgrade wizard. We'll paste in the path to our build. There we see our next version of our application, and we'll click Next. Now we validate the DAC pack, and we run to policy. We get a simple output that tells us what's the expected value and what the actual value is. Again, greens across the board. We can continue on. Now the system is analyzing the environment. It's looking at the version 1 of the DAC pack, and it's looking at the database, and it's comparing those two to understand, is everything in sync, and what changes are going to be necessary to the environment to bring it to the next version of the data tier app. Again, we get the green check mark, good to go. Click Next, the summary page. Now I'm going to back off here, Ted. The system's doing all the work for me. I didn't have to generate an alter script. My developer didn't have to generate an alter script. I didn't have to figure out what order to run things in. I didn't have to read through a bunch of instructions on how to make it work. The system is going through and analyzing how to take V1 of my app and bring it to the next version of the app. So at the very end here, our application will be upgraded. Great. We'll click Finish. We'll go ahead and select data from our authors table. And voila, there's our middle name.
Yeah, great. That's great.
Pretty cool stuff, eh?
Yeah, great stuff.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you. It's great to see how that's coming together. If we can switch back to the slides. Thank you. So, for our developers, we think about enhancing their productivity. We think about productivity in terms of time to solution. We also think about richness of solution. We primarily think about delivering solutions that are well integrated with .NET and Visual Studio, but we're also focused on delivering the interoperability for other languages and environments. In the 2008 wave, we introduced a conceptual level model to our data access strategy, the entity data model. This conceptual level model raised the level of abstraction above the logical and physical level to allow developers to work at the conceptual level, on business concepts. And this allows a separation of concerns between the developer and the DBA. The entity framework is how we bring the entity data model into the .NET environment. In .NET 3.5, we released the first version of the entity framework. We saw strong adoption. We got a lot of great feedback from developers, and we're acting on that feedback, and we've got a great release coming in .NET 4 early next year of the entity framework. We also released, as a part of the 2008 wave, ADO.NET Data Services. Essentially, ADO.NET's data services makes it very easily to project a data model in a kind of a web-friendly data service. And this is all part of a vision of making it easy to connect producers of data with consumers of data. And we're integrating the same protocol into some of our applications. In reporting services in SQL Server 2008 R2, you'll be able to publish data feeds from reports. In SharePoint and Office 2010, you'll be able to publish feeds of your SharePoint data model. And in terms of consumption, in our managed self-service BI experience in Excel, you're going to be able to consume those data feeds. It's also about supporting the interoperability with other programming languages environment. We're continuing to invest in our JDBC support and our PHP driver to provide the key interoperability that you need. So in order to show you some of what's coming together in .NET 4, I'd like to invite Pablo Castro to the stage. Pablo? Hey, welcome. Great to see you.
See you too. Hi, everyone. So in this demo, what I wanted to do is I wanted to touch on a couple of development scenarios. And I'm going to writing first with the entity framework. So let me show you what I have here. I have Visual Studio 2010, the Beta 2 build. And I have a web application, mostly empty for now. And I also have, I kind of wanted to do a database demo. So I didn't want to cook up my own database. Dan just created a DAC pack. So he handed it to me, not really in real time, but he did before. So all I did is I imported the DAC pack into Visual